You know, the line between acceptance and rejection is looking real blurry right now. Hi everybody, my name is Tulla and I'm about to be entering my sophomore year at Stanford. A few weeks ago, I had a meeting to read my Stanford admissions file. Now, I know a ton of other people have done this. It's a super popular thing to do, to see what your comments and critiques were from your college applications and your essays and your stats and everything like that. It's relatively easy to set up. Because of COVID, mine was online through a Zoom call, but I know normally you can go to like an office in person on like any regular year. So in today's video, I'm going to be letting y'all know everything that happened in that meeting that I had and reading you all of the feedback and comments from my Stanford admissions file. Let's get started. So first thing, when I joined the Zoom call, the woman that was reading my file let me know that I could not have any kind of electronic notes or recordings or photos of anything. The entire time she was giving me verbal comments, and I had to write it down with a sheet of paper and a pen. I wasn't allowed to use an iPad and an Apple Pencil or any kind of recording or anything like that. So I don't actually have the notes that I wrote with me here. I ended up taking the notes that I copied. I was scribbling so fast that they're like not even halfway legible at some points. I actually ended up taking those pages of notes. It was about 4 on just the front, so 2 pages front and back, and I turned them all into a Google Doc here. As you can see, it's quite a bit of information. It was maybe a 45-minute to an hour meeting. It was supposed to take only 30, but we ran a little bit over. It was a lot of information. I think the woman said it was 8 full pages in my total file. Not all of those pages were like full and they weren't front and back, but it was still a lot of information to write down in what was supposed to be a 30-minute meeting. To give you all a good idea of how much information it really was, I ended up with about a 1,300 word Google Doc that is not verbatim everything that was said in the meeting, but the general idea of it and the things that weren't directly contained in my admissions file, things like GPA and stuff like that, I didn't copy because I already knew. So last thing before I start reading my individual comments from the admissions meeting, to be honest, this is some really helpful stuff if you're trying to get into college. A lot of it also talks about which extracurriculars look really good and which ones I stuck with for 4 years and all of that kind of stuff, and some essay quotes that they thought were the best from all of the essays I submitted. Stanford had a ton of essays, so they really picked these out of a bunch of writing that I submitted. Also, I know a ton of videos like this do exist, and I know some people have seen a lot of their stuff get redacted. There's a rumor that the earlier you do it, the less they redact, because as time goes on, they redact more. As far as I know, nothing of mine was redacted except for the comments from my letters of recommendation, because when I applied, I waived my right to read those. So those have all been redacted, but the woman didn't tell me anything else had been. With that, here are all of the comments from my accepted Stanford admissions file. Okay, so at the beginning of the meeting, the woman that was doing my admissions file review showed me a big chart that had all of my information filled out. It had things like my school, GPA, what I was applying as to Stanford, so like my applied majors, my academic rigor, ACT, SAT, AP scores, everything like that. If you want that information, I would recommend watching my stats video. If I included that here, this would be like a 40-minute video, but I will read the tags that Stanford gave me and the things that aren't already directly contained in my stats video. So here's the unique information that I haven't already talked about. So the first section on this page was my school information, things like school and GPA. Next was titled Applicant. I applied regular decision to Stanford. The 3 majors that I applied under were human biology, bioengineering, and mathematical and computational science. Box titled Rigor, it said MD, which I'm assuming means most demanding. I took a very rigorous high school schedule, so that would make sense. Then it listed my interview scores, which were 1, 1, and 1. The next page was titled Committee Read. I believe it was Committee Read 2. At the top of the page, it said 4-0-0 admit. I'm assuming this was my final committee read, and this was the committee read that got me accepted into Stanford. Now, this was not my first committee read. I did not get accepted on my first committee read. You'll hear more about that later. Next, it says test RTG, probably rating. R1, Reader 1, HSR 3, SUP 2, EC 2, SPIV 3, eval 2-. HSR could be high school rigor, ECs could be extracurriculars, and SPIV. I'm not sure about the SP, but I'm thinking IV could mean intellectual vitality, which is a big thing across this application. A ton of people talk about it in other videos, and I'm sure they have a better idea of it than I do. So if you want to know more about intellectual vitality, I'm not the person to ask, but I do know it's a huge thing across college applications. So if you were applying to college, it's definitely something I would look into and show in your applications, intellectual vitality. Then on the same page, we have the Reader 2 scores, so R2, HSR 3, SUP 2, EC 2, SPIV 2, Eval 2-. So those were my Reader 1 and 2 scores. So the next page was my February committee read. This was my first committee read. The form was titled From Ben Committee Prep into Ben Committee Read, Recommendation Undetermined. So yeah, my first committee read was undetermined. I didn't get in on my first one. So the next form is March committee read, titled Committee Read, Recommendation, Defer / Waitlist. Summary WL, ... admit ? Spoiler alert, I was admitted. Under tags, it says deserves OPP to emerge, POE, service X / blending STEM and I'm assuming humanities, / sum of parts. I think some of these are my essays, I'm not quite sure. Then it lists my APs taken, my high school GPA, my weighted and unweighted, my rank in my high school class, things like that, my testing, all of that kind of stuff. That's all contained in my stats video that you should go and check out if you're applying to college. Next is IV evidence. I think this is intellectual vitality evidence. Again, not positive, but it would make sense. Under here is listed hum bio, bioengineering, math, and then all of my extracurriculars. Then I just wrote STEM. Service over 450 hours, NC shining, POS positive, self-concept, NAV network, leadership. The last few things, I don't know what those mean. Okay, here's possibly the most interesting part. It was some of their favorite essay quotes from my essays. I found these really interesting because after a whole lot of writing, it was really weird to see what specific pieces and parts they liked the best. So here are apparently the best quotes from my Stanford essays. For the past 2 summers, I have spent time at Duke University's Talent Identification Program, conceived and directed a math tutoring program helping over 220 incoming high school freshmen, and taken trips abroad with my family in order to immerse myself in different cultures, histories, foods, and customs. Next is something called IVE. I'm thinking this is intellectual vitality essay. In the future, I hope to study medicine and learn more about the genetics behind conditions similar to mine. I wish to immerse myself in a world where we not only research abnormalities, but embrace them. Next is a quote from my roommate essay. My friends and family would agree that when they turn on the radio, I'm always the first to break into song and dance. My unconventional playlists are something you might initially question, but I hope you'll eventually learn to appreciate. By the end of the year, I guarantee that we will be belting out the lyrics to Bohemian Rhapsody and Hakuna Matata together. As long as you don't think a hot dog is a sandwich, I'm sure we'll get along just fine. I talked a lot about food in my essay, so that's how I wrapped it up. Next is my Reader 1 review form. Tulla Picardi wants to major in hum bio and eventually wants to become a physician. She has excellent grades and test scores, ranks 8th in her large class. Tulla is award-winning in speech debate, state level. I'm assuming mock trial is speech and debate to them. She developed and acts as a founder/director of a math program for incoming high school students. She is an accomplished varsity weightlifter, participates in teen court, and also in a Duke talent identification program. She shows both depth and breadth in her extracurriculars. Lots of leadership and commitment. Her writing is quite good. She articulately discusses the value of both the humanities and sciences. While I didn't see in-depth IV ... she touched on it and showed a mature writing style. Overall, I think this Southern girl is a very unique blend, making her a very interesting candidate. It's pretty weird to hear someone talk about you and an application that you spent so many hours of your life on. Then Reader 1 apparently gave me some scores and listed some stuff. Testing/HSR, MD/RIG. I think this is testing/high school rigor, MD most demanding/rigorous. Then they list my rank in class, and then I took 13 out of 16 AP. After this were some quotes from my redacted letters of rec. Obviously I can't read those to you because I don't know them. Next, they relist my interview scores. Interview -1,1,1, notable maturity, interesting. I don't know if this is notable maturity and I was interesting in my interview, or if this is notable maturity, interesting. Then PE-1. I think this is where they talk about my essays. Interesting take on humanities versus sciences, EC-weightlifting, learn-genetics, RM-friendly, mean-good essay about her name. I'm so glad that I spent hours working on that stupid roommate essay and all they got out of it was friendly. Next is my Reader 2 form, which is significantly shorter and also the last page of the packet that I was read. Here it restates my interview scores, 1,1,1, impressed with presentation in IV, bumping SPIV to 2. What this seems like is that my Reader 2 thought that my interviewer was impressed with my intellectual vitality and therefore bumped their score, which was previously a 3 in intellectual vitality, to a 2, which is probably a much better score. Next, hum bio. Successful leadership equals mock trial districts, 1st and state 4th. Weightlifting captain, director summer tutoring program, lacrosse co-captain, strong writing, IV equals IVE. I think this is like all of the evidence of my intellectual vitality is in my intellectual vitality essay. Personal genetics / summer Duke program. Then the last line of my file. Potentially compelling, one to look at again in committee prep. There you have it. That is my full Stanford admissions file and apparently all of the reasons why I was accepted. It is so strange to see literally dozens of hours of work and writing and effort and then my entire high school career condensed into 8 pages of critiques of me. It's like some like weird out of body experience looking back on like who I was in high school and being like, this is potentially a good person for college. Potentially compelling. Interesting mix. It's just bizarre. But yes, that is basically it. Once again, if you're applying to college in the next few years, I want to remind you to check out my stats video. That, along with this video, should give you tons of help into the college applications process. I also have tons of videos reading my college essays, including some of the ones that I talked about in here. So if you want full-length versions of those, you can check those out. I think I have a playlist with all of them, maybe. Go check it out. That's it for today's video. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed or if this helped you at all, please leave a like. It helps me with the YouTube algorithm. That again makes no sense. Leave a comment if you feel like it, and please subscribe if you want to see any more of my content. I'm going back to school in about a month and a half. So if you want any more Stanford content, that will be coming super soon. Thank you so much for watching, and hopefully I'll see you next week. Bye.